Okay, we will we will begin and welcome everybody. I am coming to you as a new program that we are offering out of the Shah Learning Center titled Real Israelis, Real Lives. And I am joined here today by Rabbi Benji Myers. Rabbi, I'm so appreciative and grateful that you are joining us here today. First of all, can we begin with a little introduction? Can you tell me where you're from originally, where you live now, and what some of your responsibilities are and specifically have been since October the 7th?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting me, and thank you to everyone at the Congregation Shara Shammai for joining us. So as you can probably tell from my accent, Real Israelis was an interesting introduction. I was actually born in the UK in a town called Bradford, which is in the north, in Yorkshire. I've since lived in England, Israel, Australia, and also in America. I was on Shlichut for 5 years in Dallas, Texas. And since moving back for the last 12 years or so, I've lived and I'm now a member of Kibbutz Migdal Oz, which is a kibbutz about 15 minutes south of Yerushalayim. For the last, slightly over a decade, I've been working with the Strauss Amiel organization. We train rabbis and educators and send them all over the world, and Rabbi Fishman is one of our graduates. So thank you for doing that as well. On the kibbutz, I have a number of volunteer positions. First of all, I'm the deputy director of Tzachi. Tzachi is the Tzevet Chirum Yishuvi, or Tzevet Chosen Yishuvi. It's the resilience team. That means that anything that happens on the kibbutz that needs a civilian response, or if the army needs our help in doing whatever it needs doing, we are there to provide that sort of response. So, for example, on the morning of October 7th, during the Tefillah, which is when the rocket started coming in our general direction, which is an hour and a half or so after it started in the south. So we had a decision to make whether or not we're going to stay in shul or do something else. So that decision was made by us as Tzachi together with the army, or the Kitat Kunenot, the paramilitary emergency response unit, and we work together with them to make sure that everybody gets the message and everybody knows where to go in the event that an alarm does sound.
Just so we can get a sense, how many people live on the kibbutz of Migdal Oz?
So there are approximately 70 families that live on the kibbutz, either as members of the kibbutz or live here renting or for various other reasons.
So comparatively a small community.
Relatively small, but we also have 3 educational institutes on site. We have the Women's Seminary, which is part of Yeshivat HaLetzion. That's at the southern end of the kibbutz. At the northern end of the kibbutz, we have Yeshivat Machanaim, which is part of Old Torah Stone. And in the center, we have World Bnei Akiva's Mechina, which is a half-year program. On the morning of 7th of October, the Mechina was here, and the Midrasha was here, at least in part. So we also had responsibility for them as well. So you're talking about hundreds of people, including about 150 children.
Okay. How are things on the ground today in your community from a security perspective? Once again, you are 15 minutes south of Jerusalem. Could you give those who are listening a sense of what does a small yeshuv, a community, a kibbutz, 15 minutes south of Jerusalem, what does that look like from a security perspective?
So we've had about 25 households whose husband, father was called up into the reserves. We have on top of that the Kitat Konenot, the emergency response team, and about half of that is made up of people from within the kibbutz, and half from reservists who've come in to support them. It also means that people like myself who don't have the military background or who are no longer doing miluim, who are now also walking around armed, which is not something that I do on a regular basis, but I now have sitting, just down by my side a gun, which I would be delighted to get rid of once all this is over. But until then, my primary responsibility is to look after my home, my family, and the kibbutz. So
do you feel
I walk
safe?
around
Do
with
the
that.
members of the kibbutz feel safe? Is there any type of threat that you're experiencing?
I would say it's a very, very tense time. It's a tense time both within the kibbutz. Our nearest neighbors is a town of about 11,000 people called Beit Fajar. Beit Fajar over the years have shot at the kibbutz, have thrown Molotov cocktails towards the kibbutz. They even took out a contract on our previous Rav Shatz, our security officer. At the best of times, they're people that we don't necessarily want to mix with. And at the moment, it's a lot more tense. You add to that the fact that you're talking about, like I said, about 25 households where, the father, the husband who would normally be around is suddenly not here. So we're talking about single mother homes with children who are also needing to, keep up a sense of normality for the sake of their children, while at the same time worrying about their husbands, fathers, children. We have multi-generational families here on the kibbutz. The Sunday night of October 8th, we actually had a suspected infiltration into the kibbutz. We heard gunshots.
Can you take through the listeners who are watching this? Can you take them through what that looks like practically, a suspected infiltration in the kibbutz? Because that just sounds horrifying and frightening. What did that look like? Just so the ordinary watcher of listening to your words right now can have a proper sense and understanding of real life in Israel.
Okay, so it started off, we heard some noises that sounded like firecrackers. And we actually thought that perhaps some of the students who are around here from overseas who didn't quite understand the gravity of what was happening all around them were setting them off for fun. So my wife, who works in the Mechina, and I went to go and speak with them. And as we're walking up towards them, we suddenly hear some more gunshots very, very close by. And immediately after that, there is an alarm that sounds over the kibbutz-wide PA system, right, that blares out an alarm together with the words Chadirat Mechablim, Chadirat Mechablim, which means terrorist infiltration, terrorist infiltration.
What goes through your mind in that moment?
Okay, so the immediate response was my wife went and stayed with her students, and I ran home. I was about 60 seconds away from home and made it back in 30. And what happens immediately after that? The instructions are, you go into your home, you lock the doors, you close the windows, you shut the blinds, you turn off all the internal lights and turn on all the external lights so that the Kitat Konenut, the emergency response team, and then the army that arrives within minutes can see what's happening outside, but without giving away too much of what's happening inside.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that happens, the Tzachi team also goes into operation. So our first port of call is to send out an emergency message to the whole kibbutz. And we have apps that shows us where everybody is and sends out basically a beacon that if you're in distress, you respond and say, I'm in distress. And we know to send the army in that direction. Wow. And the first thing we have to make sure is that everybody is safe and well and locked away in their homes. So that's the first thing we did. Like I said, my wife is with her students and I'm at home. So I'm on my phone, I have my computer going. I have 5 children at home, all sitting in the dark very quietly, which anybody who knows my children knows that it's not the easiest thing in the world to get them to do. And at the time I hadn't yet been given a gun. So the thing that I took for my own personal defense, should I actually need it, is a cricket bat. Okay. That's what I had. So I had that with me. And for the next 2.5 hours, we're making sure that everybody is safe and well. We're sending out messages just to keep people, give them as much information as we have and as much information as we can. And trying to keep people as calm and as relaxed as possible. At the same time, because this also made the national news, so I'm getting messages because of my position within Tzachi from husbands at the front saying, what's happening at home?
Wow.
So I'm trying to keep the wives calm in one place, trying to keep the husbands calm in the other place. I have 5 children at home, and trying very hard to keep calm myself.
Wow.
2.5 hours later, the army gives the all clear, and we all breathe a sigh of relief. And
so there was no. So the infiltration was suspected one, but it turned out that there was not anybody.
Right. So we don't have 100% of the information. It's possible that somebody did get in and got out very, very quickly once they realized what the response was going to be. The shots sounded like they came from next door.
Terrifying. Terrifying.
And yes, and that was our introduction, and this is coming immediately after the news of everything that happened around Gaza, with infiltrations into kibbutzim there, and all of that is going through your mind. Is the same thing about to happen here? And if so, what are we going to do to respond? What are we going to do to take care of ourselves and our families?
Allow me, there's a lot more that can be said on this topic. Allow me to change topics. I understand that you are also a member of the Chevra Kadisha, or what we will call some of the immediate volunteers who have been signing up for those dealing with funerals, for those dealing with the preparation of Jewish bodies. As we know in Jewish law, a body is washed, a process called tahara, prior to its burial. Could you share with those who are watching some of the responsibilities and some of the needs that have come about as a result of where we are today?
Right. So yes, I'm a member of the Chevra Kadisha here on Migdaloz, and therefore part of the wider Gush Etzion Chevra Kadisha. And we were asked,
Kadisha meaning the burial society.
The burial society, right. And we were asked if we would be willing to volunteer to help prepare the civilians who were murdered for burial. So all the bodies from the terrorist attacks were taken to one location in Israel, the Shura army camp. And from there, the army takes care of soldiers and other emergency response victims. And all the civilians were sent to a different location in Rishon LeZion, in the center of the country, where they were prepared for burial.
Right.
As you said correctly, when a person passes away, there is a process of tahara, of ritual purification, that involves rinsing them and cleaning them and dressing them in tachrichim, in clothes, white clothes, and then
burial shrouds.
Thank you. That we then bury them in those shrouds. Outside of Israel, they're all buried in coffins. In Israel, generally, they're buried without coffins. Okay? The exception is soldiers who are killed in action. And as I learned, unfortunately, also victims of terror, the families are given the option of either burying them in coffins, or, as normally happens in a burial here, they're just buried in the shrouds. And the one major deal, two major differences between a regular, as terrible as this sounds, a regular passing and somebody who is killed al Kiddush Hashem, in sanctification of God's name, which anybody who is killed simply because they're Jewish, right? Which is what happened in this case. There you don't rinse the bodies, and you don't dress them in all the shrouds. Right? What you do is you wrap them in the one shroud, and you send them up to heaven, dressed in the clothes that they arrived to us in, And the idea is that when they come before the heavenly throne and God turns around and says, what happened? Why weren't you prepared properly? They can turn around and say, dear God, I was killed. I was killed al Kiddush Hashem. I was killed in the sanctification of God's name. This is my life's blood that's appearing before you. Now you have mercy on your people. You take vengeance on behalf of your people. You go and do what you need to do. And as a result of which, we needed to prepare the bodies in such a way that on the one hand, we fulfill this requirement that they appear before the heavenly throne, dressed as they were right at the music rave, dressed as they were in the kitot konenot, in the emergency response teams around Gaza, the children who were killed, the ones who were burned, right? We have to prepare them as they arrived, but at the same time, you're talking about a white shroud, and a white shroud is going to show up everything that was there. So there were various things that we did, and I don't want to go into too many details, but there were various things that we had to do to make sure that when we present the family with their loved one for burial, that it's done in the most respectful way possible. Right. And one of the things that we kept saying over and over again to the victims, to the bodies that were in front of us, was slicha u'mechila. We beg forgiveness for the way we're treating you in case we're not treating you respectfully enough. And I can tell you, and I've seen it with my own eyes, everything that you're hearing in the news, and I highly recommend you don't look too closely at the photos, and you don't look too closely at the films that are coming out. It's all true. It's all true. And we're standing there as the Chevra Kadisha, and we're asking forgiveness in case we haven't treated them properly. It's heartrending, and if you allow me to add, they've identified about 800 bodies, civilian bodies so far, meaning if you add onto that the number of soldiers and police and emergency response units, where another approximately 350 were killed, you're looking at still around 300 or 200, 250, 300 bodies that haven't been identified. They are so badly disfigured, they are so badly burnt that you can't even do a DNA test. And the families are waiting to bury their loved ones. The families are waiting to sit shiva for them. We as the Chevra Kadisha, all we want to do is get them ready for burial. All we want to do is to provide them with that last bit of honor, of respect, of decency, of humanity. And at the moment, we just can't do it. And it's heartbreaking.
That is a tragedy compounded with tragedy. There are so many things going through my mind right now. First of all, what an exceptional act of righteousness to perform such a dignified service to those who have been murdered. I have to ask the question that is jumping out at me in my mind: how do you go to sleep how are you handling this emotionally, psychologically? When you close your eyes at night, psychologically, does it take its own toll?
It definitely takes a toll. And when you're there, you have to know what your personal limits are. We've had a meeting as the volunteers in the Chevra Kadisha. We had a meeting at the end of last week with a social worker.
Yes.
Just to be able to share some of the, some of what we've gone through, but mainly, as terrible as it sounds, tips of how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came up over and over again is you have to know your own personal limits. Right. And you have to know that if you need to step away for a moment and you need to settle your mind, it's okay to do it. It's not a sign of disrespect. It's you taking a moment so that you can carry on. I can honestly say that over the last week and a half. There have been times where, in my own personal davening, I've come across a verse that I've said hundreds of times, and all of a sudden it just takes on a completely different meaning. Right? You come to the second bracha of the Amidah that talks about mechaya mitim, right? Of bringing the dead back to life, and it takes on a completely different meaning. You come to psukim of God's vengeance, and it takes on a completely different meaning. I sat in a shiur that the rabbi here on the kibbutz gave a week and a half ago on Shabbat, regular shiur on the weekly parsha, and he was talking about vengeance, and he was talking about Cain and Abel, and I was sitting at the back, and it was all that I could do, to keep my stiff British upper lip going, and not completely lose it. And
Incredible.
I have done that on more than one occasion, right, where I would just close myself off, go in my little office here at home and just cry. And that's the response, and I'm doing my best to keep it together at the moment as well.
I can't think of a more holy, more worthy, more righteous, more saintly responsibility than caring for the dead bodies.
And
I
just
want to
to be clear that there are many of us.
Yes,
right? This is
yes, absolutely. I want to
right.
thank you. If you're watching this either on a recording or live, the very purpose of this series, titled Real Israelis, Real Lives, is to showcase precisely these types of conversations, things that you might not be picking up in the Western media, things you might not see on television, the things you might not be reading about. And it is people like Benji and others that we are hoping to speak with and talk to over the coming weeks that will give an insight into a variety of different aspects of current Israeli society, not just as an Israel update, but as a way of getting beneath the noise and seeing the true lives of Israelis and what the state of life is like at the moment. Benji, I know we can continue speaking. I want to pause here. Thank you so much. Benji Maya is an individual who works as the assistant director of the security team at Migdal Oz, and also a member of the volunteer Kadisha, the Burial Society. For everything that you do, know that the Jewish people thank you, support you, applaud you. You allow us to stand tall and with great dignity. We wish you strength. We wish you success. We wish you blessing over the coming days, weeks, and months. What you are doing is truly exceptional. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and l'chaim in the ultimate sense of the word.
Amen.
We should
Amen.
all merit life.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
We will continue Real Israelis, Real Lives every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Montreal time. This is 7 p.m. Israel time. This will be recorded as the Shah Learning Center and put out on a recording on the Shah Hashemayim YouTube channel. And this will also be broadcast on my Facebook Live page every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you very much.